Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you now about spoofing. Okay, so we talk about spoofing, what it is, the consequences, and what you can do to protect yourself. So let's start by what spoofing is. Spoofing is basically a type of cyber attack in which an adversary masquerades as a legitimate or trusted user. So we just talked about identity theft and the fact that basically what the user does is to collect information about some person and then tries to use that information to behave as though they were in fact the person that they are imitating or that they are impersonating. What you need to note is that spoofing is different from phishing. In phishing, basically, it's a little bit like working in the blind. You don't know and you just make a lucky guess and hope that the victim is going to respond and then you can proceed with the attack. However, spoofing and phishing tend to work hand in hand. So you might try to impersonate a legitimate user and then fish for more information in order to continue the process. So they both complement each other. So let's look at how spoofing occurs. So we look at, for example, this email. Okay, it's from a friend of mine who is called Malto, except that if you notice, the email is somebody else's email. Well, at least you don't know, I know. Okay, I know by looking at the email address that this is not Malto's email. So that's the first warning sign. The next warning sign is the fact that this address, if I were to click on it, would probably lead me to some website which would ask me to fill in a form or something like this. And by doing that, I would either give them information about myself that they can use to proceed with an identity theft attack, or that they could use later on in order to provoke other spoofing attacks to other friends of mine, because they gather information that tells them whom I might be connected to or whom I might be friends to. So by clicking, for example, on this link, you could also install, for example, a virus on your system or a spyware, which then collects other personal data, for example, emails that you write to other people, and a whole body of information that you probably don't want to be sharing with at least somebody that you do not know. So how do you protect yourself? Well, there are a couple of tricks. First of all, when you get a message, you shouldn't, or at least should avoid, clicking on links that are embedded in the message, so in the email, for example. You want to also look at things like the address field, so the person from whom the message has been sent, because usually what they will do is that in order to get the response from you back to themselves, they will use an email address that is linked to themselves or that they have a connection to. And then over that, what they tend to do is have the name of somebody whom they think you will recognize and whom you're more likely to be open to responding to in an honest way. You want to try also to use common sense. So sometimes what you want to do is to look at the email, how it's structured. Things like lots of grammatical errors, words that are in the wrong place, the method of speaking. So we talked about identity theft, the fact that, for example, the way that we communicate constitutes in itself a message or a pattern of whom we are. And you can tell pretty much from the way that the email is written to see whether this is really from the person that you trust. Usually with these emails or with spoofing emails or with spoofing messages, what happens is that you have some red flags also. So you, for example, might get some fake offering. Usually these offerings are rather interesting or nice. So for example, they might say something like, oh, you're going to get a free phone, or you're going to get some free gift cards. If it looks too good to be true, then it probably is. So you maybe don't want to be too willing to give out your credentials. Your credentials are much more important than a free phone or than a free gift card. If you are going, for example, to join gaming sites, so for example, Farmville, you need to be careful about what it is they are asking you to share. So for example, if you get an email or a message that says, would you like to participate in this? If the message is requiring you to provide a lot of personal information, you want to think carefully about why they want this information and probably decline to share the information. Other ways of spoofing include, so the attackers get more and more sophisticated and think about various ways of persuading you to share personal information. And the whole purpose of all of what I have been trying to tell you throughout the last series of lectures is that your personal information is very, very valuable data. And so people who want to get access to this personal information will go to great lengths to do so. Manual sharing scams basically work as follows. You have an intriguing video or a picture, for example, and that is interesting and that people want to interact with. And what they want you to, the attacker wants you to do is basically to, for example, like the picture or to share the picture. And by doing so, what you tell the attacker is who your friends are. And so you build a network of who persons are, whom the person can try to persuade to divulge personal information if you are not willing to do so. So for example, we look at this picture which says, for example, a really cute sentence from a child which says something like, "Dear Mats, please grow up and solve your own problems because I have my own problems," okay? And usually what happens is that, as I said before, when we talked about identity theft, this makes you laugh or it makes you think it's funny, and so you share it with somebody you like, which is exactly what the person trying to provoke the attack is wanting you to do. Okay. Other ways of provoking spoofing attacks are also, for example, from reposting content. So, for example, you get these messages which ask you if you're pro, for example, terrorism, if you're against terrorism, for example, if you want to spread this message about women who are being maltreated, for example, in Africa or in Asia, and you repost this content. By reposting the content, you also create a network which tells the person who is the originator of the message, who your friends are, who this network of people that you interact with constantly are. And so it allows them to build a profile of who you interact with and whom they can contact in order to spread the spam. And usually there are enticements. There are enticements such as I said before, things like gifts, things like rewards, or things like points you score. And sometimes they are just psychological rewards. So for example, if you're Christian, it says something like, if you spread this message, something good is going to happen in your life, or you're going to see the benefit of God in your life. And all of this progressively allows the attacker to build a profile, as I said before, of whom your friends are by working with the psychology or with the person that you are. So next time what we want to talk about is how you build on this information that is posted, for example, how reposts allow the attacker to build a network of who your friends are, and how it allows people who want to do this to stalk, to bully on the internet or on the web. So we talked about spoofing, we talked about phishing. I've been careful to point out to you that spoofing happens by allowing, because the attacker tries to masquerade whom it is you are. Okay, so basically, for example, if he masquerades, for example, to say, okay, whom it is you are, or whom it is your friend is, then, or somebody it is that you trust, then he's able to form friends with you, to interact with your network, to get information that you otherwise would be hesitant to share. And that building on these masquerade attacks, you can then provoke phishing attacks, which we talk about in a couple more lectures.